And here we are live. So I will go ahead and introduce myself first. I am Marissa Town. I am the clinical director for CWD. I am a person with diabetes. I am a nurse, and I am a clinical diabetes care and education specialist. And I'm really excited to have Cari here tonight to talk about the Panther Project, because I just think it's such an awesome project that really will help healthcare professionals and patients and families alike to just better manage diabetes and have everything in one spot where about the technology. I just really love what you gals have put together. So I'm going to go ahead and read your introduction, if that's all right, Cari.
Yeah.
All right, so Cari Berget is a registered nurse and certified diabetes care and education specialist with 9 years experience in pediatric type 1 diabetes care and clinical research. She manages the Pediatric Artificial Pancreas Research Team at the Barbara Davis Center, where the team conducts numerous clinical trials each year with advanced insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, and automated insulin delivery systems. She's also the co-director of the Panther Program, closing the loop on diabetes technology education, developing relevant and accessible resources for clinicians and people living with diabetes related to diabetes technology. Welcome, Cari.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So should I go ahead and start and share my screen?
Sure. I did want to let everybody know that's logged in. If you have questions throughout the chat, the Zoom, please go ahead and type them into the chat box or the Q&A, and we will be doing some Q&A after the first portion of the presentation. And we would love you to please interact and post questions and comments.
All right. All right. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and thanks to Marissa for inviting me to present. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see my, my slides. And as Marissa mentioned, my name is Cari Berget, and I am going to be here today sharing with you all about our Panther program that we have started at the Barbara Davis Center. And I will go ahead and get started. So what I'm hoping we can do today is, first I'll give you a little bit of an overview. I'll share who we are and what the Panther program is and what some of the resources we have available are. And then I'm hoping at the end we can have some time so I can hear from the group about which resources you might want to see a little bit more of today. I could pull up some of them and show you a little bit more in depth. And I'd also love to hear what other types of resources you might like to see on our site in the future. So be thinking about that as well. Okay, so the Panther team, who are we? So we are a team of diabetes educators, clinicians, and research staff from the Barbara Davis Center for Diabetes at the University of Colorado on the Anschutz Medical Campus, which is located just outside of Denver, Colorado in Aurora. And we conduct numerous trials each year testing new diabetes technologies, including continuous glucose monitors, insulin pumps, and automated insulin delivery systems, also referred to as closed loop technologies or artificial pancreas. And our group has participated in clinical trials with nearly every device that has come to the market in the last 20 years or so. And so we have years of experience using these devices and working with patients and their families and helping individuals with diabetes be successful on these devices as we're going through the trials and as we are then transitioning these devices into the real world and into clinical care. And we have together 110 collective years of diabetes experience, which also includes 59 years of personal type 1 diabetes experience among our group. Here you can see a photo of our Panther team from one of our recent Zoom meetings that we had, as you all I'm sure have experienced as well. Everything is by Zoom, including our team meetings. And so you can kind of see who we are here and all of our team members. But our goal with this Panther program is to find a way to share our experience and expertise with diabetes technology with with people with diabetes and also with clinicians, so that we can kind of leverage this experience we have and share it, so that hopefully it might be able to help individuals and clinicians be successful with these devices and find a reliable place for information and resources. So the Barbara Davis Center, a little bit about the clinic itself. It's a large type 1 diabetes specialty clinic and research center. We serve more than 6,000 people with diabetes come for their primary clinical care in both a pediatric and adult clinic combined. And each year we have nearly 400 new patients that join who are newly diagnosed each year. And we have high technology use in our clinics. We're really big supporters of technology and really try and help facilitate access to technology for everyone in our clinic that desires and to access it. We have over 64% of our kids in the pediatric clinic use pumps, and 52% of adults. And then 71% of our pediatric patients use CGM, and 63% of our adults use CGM. And so my colleague and friend, Dr. Laurel Messer, was actually the founder and creator of this concept. And she created the Panther program for us as a way to leverage that experience, a place to share our experience and to create resources that are relevant and practical related to diabetes technology, and also are accessible. And we do this by having a website, as you can see the link here on the screen. And we provide web-based resources that are free to anybody, free to everybody to be able to access and download. Panther, in case you're wondering, actually, it's an acronym that stands for Practical Advanced Therapies. And it also, at the same time, is paying homage to the type 1 diabetes educational legacy of the Barbara Davis Center's Pink Panther book series called Understanding Diabetes. And that's been a beloved educational resource for people with diabetes and their families and caregivers for many, many years. It's a guide to diabetes care and has lots of educational materials. And so we wanted to stick with kind of the Panther homage there to hold to our roots. So now I'm going to go into what we have on our website, provide kind of a high level overview of all the different types of resources we have so far. And again, I'm happy to go more in depth on some of the resources here when I'm finished, and would also, again, love to hear about any suggestions or questions or resources that you might like to see on this website. So we have our resources categorized into 4 sections, as you can see here. One is tools, and these are resources for clinicians. These are really geared for clinicians who are working with technology or who are seeing patients in their clinic who are using devices. And but people with diabetes might find these useful as well, as they're really step-by-step guides to help look through the reports, understand how you're using the device, and providing kind of tips and educational tips on how to get the most out of the device. Then we also have a section called Diabetes Devices 101. And this is really general resources that would be relevant for any device, insulin pump or CGM particularly. And some examples include things like education around time and range, and skin, how to take care of skin with chronic device use, and also how to manage hyperglycemia with an insulin pump, for example. Then our other section is called Automated Insulin Delivery. And here we provide a lot of information and resources about the different automated insulin delivery systems, which again, sometimes you may hear referred to as closed loop insulin pump systems or artificial pancreas systems. And then finally, we have a section called algorithms. And this is really more of the math and engineering behind some of the algorithms that are out there that are powering and controlling some of these automated insulin delivery systems. And so we have a little bit there too as well for those who might be interested in that. Okay, so first I'm going to show you a little summary of some of the things we have in the diabetes devices section. So on the right-hand side, you see our handout called What is My Time in Range? And this provides education about what time in range is and what the goals are for that. And because as many of you may know, glucose targets in type 1 diabetes are really moving away from A1C and towards looking at time in range instead, especially for those using CGM that can really give you a really more informative overview of your glucose control and how much variability, how many highs and lows versus just the average. So we have a handout on that. And then on the left-hand side, you can see a handout we have about hyperglycemia with an insulin pump. Because again, this is just general with any device, with any insulin pump, there's always the risk of infusion set failure. And so this is important safety information for any pump to know how to manage hyperglycemia and manage any ketones due to infusion set failure and stay safe. And then in the center, you see we have some information called skin solutions. So we have a comprehensive list of tips on managing skin, preventing skin irritation, how to get devices to stay on the body, things like that. That is also included in this section. Okay, and then in the automated insulin delivery resource area, we have lots of different resources. So on the right here on the screen, you can see an example of a tip sheet we have for the Control-IQ system. The Control-IQ system is often referred to as a hybrid closed loop, and that's because there's some automated insulin delivery that the system does, but the user still is giving bolus insulin themselves for their meals. And so that's why it's referred to as a hybrid closed loop. And so this is an example. We have one of these for the 670G hybrid closed loop system. And when Omnipod 5 comes out, which is the next automated insulin delivery system expected to reach the market here pretty soon, we've been part of that clinical trial for the pivotal trial for over a year already. And then we've also been involved with a lot of the feasibility studies leading up to the commercial product that will be coming to the market. So we have years of experience using the system that we're excited to be able to kind of share from the onset as it reaches the market. And so that's one example of what we have. It kind of summarizes what the system does, what CGM it uses, how you can use it best, and then it provides some tips when using the system. On the left here, you can see some other things we have. So we also have some frequently asked questions that we have included here. And then we get into a way to kind of compare automated insulin delivery systems, compare and contrast different systems. And we've developed a framework called the CARES model to help provide a way to distinguish between systems and help people understand important pieces of each system. And so I'll go into that here in just a moment, but a lot of our resources that we have describing different systems use this CARES framework to help make kind of a uniform way to understand different systems as they come out. And so because we use this a lot within our resources, I wanted to take a moment and just let you know what this is. So our CARES framework consists of 5 sections. First is calculate. So for each system, we describe how the algorithm calculates the insulin delivery. And then in the adjust section, we talk about when the user, we talk about which parameters can be adjusted within the pump. For example, can you change the insulin to carb ratios? Can you change the basal rates or the sensitivity? Which pump settings are fixed in the system that the user can't change, and which ones can be adjusted to help them optimize their outcomes? Then the third section for R is revert. And this is describing when the system will default to standard pump therapy. So under what circumstances will this system stop automating insulin and revert the user back to a standard pump therapy with fixed, only delivering by fixed program settings. And so we can describe that for each different system that's out there. And then we have educate. So what are the key education points for each system? You know, essential training, tips and tricks, best practices. How does the user optimize time using the automated features? Because while there are a lot of similarities between different devices, there are also important kind of key distinctions that are really helpful for the user to know that's really specific to that device and may not transfer to a different one. And then finally, we talk about the sensor or sharing capabilities that go along with that device in the sensor share section. And actually, I'll go back up. So here you can see, and again, I could show one of these if that's of interest, but we compare systems. We have a chart about comparing predictive low glucose suspend features on different pumps, like the 630G, which is just suspend on low, and the 640G in Europe, 670G in manual mode with the suspend before low, and then the T-Slim Basal IQ, which also is a suspend before low. So we have a chart using the CARES framework that would describe each of those symptoms and compare and contrast for the user. We have one for comparing Medtronic 670G and 770G and the 780G that's coming out here soon. And then we have one comparing 670 to Control IQ. So we use this a lot as we think it's a helpful way to distinguish between devices and provide relevant information. Okay, the algorithm section. Now, this is really more for fun, and I can tell you I didn't make any of these resources because this is the nitty-gritty, the math about the algorithms that are out there. We currently just have 2 on PID control systems, which is the algorithm that's used in the algorithm type that's used in the 670G, for example. And we have 2 videos that were made by engineers that kind of, you know, explain the math behind the algorithms. And then the final section is tools. And this is actually our most recent area that we've developed. And this is so we could refer to them as Panther Tools. And these are fillable forms that can be used by clinicians in the moment of a clinical care encounter to help them provide quality diabetes care to device users. So the reality is that the diabetes technology landscape is evolving very rapidly. New devices are coming out all the time, and it's very difficult for clinicians to keep up with that constantly changing landscape. And so what our idea here is that we would have a tool. So this goes beyond just education on the device, but it goes into guidance and support for clinical decision-making. And it's a 5 to 6 page tool, and it guides the clinician through you know, how to assess reports for glucose outcomes, and also provides guidance on how to make dosing adjustments or an educational you know, tips or in reinforcement that are going to be really important for success. And then as the clinician is filling out things within this tool, it auto-populates into a electronic health record note template that could be cut and pasted into an electronic medical record, and then also has a kind of what in the clinical world we refer to as an after visit summary that would be given to the patient, so to the user, to provide a summary of the visit and reinforcement of some of the key educational points. So the idea here is that this can be used during the clinic visit to help the clinician and the user really get the most out of that encounter. And again, while it's geared toward clinicians, users might find this useful as well as they're trying to figure out when they start a new device, if you're one to really want to look at your own reports and assess your glucose outcomes and learn a little bit more for independently how you could what you can look for in the reports and what are the tips for use and what changes might you make based on what you're seeing. This might also be something that a user might find useful as well. And so that is a brief overview of the types of resources that we have on the website. Thank you so much for listening and for allowing me to be here to share this. We are really, really excited about this program and really hoping that we can, that it'll be useful to people and really open to any thoughts about what resources you might find to be beneficial. So I would like to have a chance to open for discussion and see if there's any of those resources anyone would like me to pull up and dive into a little bit more, or if there's any questions or anything that come up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carrie. I think these resources, I really think are great. I think it's amazing because I know, as a nurse and a diabetes educator, sometimes you really don't have a lot of time to go into learning these things when you're working in clinic from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I think it's really nice to have something that makes it easier for them. But I also do think, as someone who looks at my own patterns, maybe some friends' patterns sometimes, I don't know, it can be really helpful to have those tips and tricks and really understanding the differences between the closed loop systems, because what works for the Medtronic system may not work as well for the Control-IQ system, and then Insulin will be coming out soon, we hope. So it's I just think it's really nice that you guys have decided to put this together to streamline the education so that it's easier for people. And I also think that having something that compares the different devices could be extremely helpful for people who are looking to get on a device or perhaps change to a new device. As you know, and most of the people that are tuned in probably know, is once you sign up for a device, that's a 4-year commitment with your insurance. And like you said, because the field is changing so rapidly, 4 years feels like a really long time to commit to one algorithm, to one device. And I don't see that every 4 years rule of thumb changing, really. I know every once in a while, if you change insurances, you might be able to get a different one, but that's a big decision. Have you guys been using that in clinic in that way, in a how to help people decide which device to use?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have, but that is a really interesting, way to view it. I think that it could help in the sense of having a uniform way to describe and understand the devices then makes it more accessible to a user, because you're getting the same types of information about each device that helps whether you think that one's gonna work for you or not. Potentially. And also I would say what's interesting about your comment is that is a huge challenge, I think, in this rapidly changing landscape, is that 4-year pump warranty. But however, a lot of the changes that are coming are actually making it so that pumps are a user would get a pump, and that's just the device, the hardware. And these pumps are being upgraded to allow remote updating. So same way you would update your computer software, to the next version, or your iPhone to the next software version, you could likewise update your pump to the next algorithm. And that, I think, is going to be a huge benefit for everybody going forward. t:slim already has that, where you can do a software update and upgrade your pump, from Basal-IQ to Control-IQ. Medtronic is with the 770G that just came out. That is a Bluetooth enabled pump, and it also is a pump that can be remotely updated. So as new algorithms come out, you can update your pump to get the next algorithm. And then it's my understanding that Omnipod is also planning to have updatable software. So that's really good news and a great point. And good news for, I think, all people with diabetes.
Yeah, it's actually really incredible of the pump companies to do that for us as people with diabetes. I mean, hats off to them, because it's a difficult industry to work in, and they're looking out for us sometimes, which is great. We do have 2 questions that came in.
Great.
So the first question is, sometimes I don't make use of the detailed or technical features on my pump because they take so much time to fully understand. Is there a device info 101 resource that I could use to help me build a foundation for the more detailed resources?
That's a great question. So if I understand the question, I think maybe you're referring to things like, for example, how there's a temp target in the 670G, or there's the exercise activity or the sleep activity in Control IQ, for example. Does that seem like along the lines of what you're asking?
I think so. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, I could show, if we think this would be a good time, I could pull up an example. I do think our CARES framework, it doesn't get into the technical weeds, but I think it at least summarizes what features are available.
Yeah, and I'm thinking too, maybe like the extended bolus feature.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because in a lot of closed loop systems, you can't use the extended bolus. So that's another thing to know. But I can show, if you'd like, should I share something? Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I will do that. So, actually, because I don't want that, yeah. I'm gonna pull up the website itself. And so this is can you see that, Marissa? So this is the home page. And so when I go to resources and I go to automated insulin delivery, and this is all of our comparing systems. And as you go down, we have Control IQ resources, for example. And here is that one chart that tells you what happened. I'm sorry, this is the 670G one. We're we're just clinicians still trying to work on the website aspect of the things, but this here is an example. This is using CARES to understand Control IQ. And so we do, in this adjust section, try to also bring up kind of we're kind of helping the user understand what they have control over within this system and what they can do, what technical features, kind of getting to that question, that user can access to have some control over what's happening or try to personalize their therapy. And so, like, for example, in Control IQ, the user can modify insulin to carb ratios, basal rates, and the correction factor. And then the user can program the exercise or the sleep activity. And then we tell you the exercise activity changes the target to 140 to 160, and that the sleep activity narrows the target down to 112.5 to 120. And then also that users cannot modify the active insulin time or the correction target that's used of 110. So helping like, this is what you can do, this is what you can't. And then in Educate, we have lots of tips about how to get the most out of that device. And in here is where you might see things like, don't override boluses, for example. I know this is really small text on this kind of a format, but again, this is designed for you to look at home and download and have. But I think that, that would probably be where I would say you could find information like that.
Yeah, and I think it's so helpful because when you go and you get a new device and you go through the training, as you know, as the clinician side of it, sometimes it's just so much information to take in at one time that it's just nice to have this to go back to, because I'm not going to read that book, the book that
Yeah.
has 300 pages of information. I mean, if I might look up an alarm code, right? but
Right.
I think
Yeah.
it's really nice that you've created this summary, because it's just easier to go to. And I think it's really helpful, and it's a free resource. Just as a reminder, This is all free. It's a really nice thing that you guys are doing. There's a few more questions, so I'm going to ask the next one. Okay, so are any of the resources geared towards tweens or teens to help them take the reins of their own diabetes management?
Yeah, that is a great question. We haven't taken that approach because the goal of our program is accessible, practical. Again, getting to Marissa's point of like, there's a plethora of educational resources out there. I mean, you have a 400-page user guide. You could go onto the industry's webpage and you could download materials about the device. But what we're trying to do is make it digestible, accessible, and also include all of the devices, at least the ones that we feel like we have a lot to offer in. And so with that being said, we don't really tackle the developmental stages of type 1 life within our website. But I would say that if you were a teen and working with your parent and trying to figure out like a way to become more independent or, take the reins a little bit more, I would hope that our Panther program could be a resource to provide that knowledge and information to empower a teen and a parent to be able to have a discussion about what are the things you would need to know about this system. And we have also those general resources about like skin and being safe on a pump, like really important information about how you manage hyperglycemia to make sure that you prevent DKA. And so I would hope that our resources could be empowering in that situation. But to answer the question, we don't have anything specific for developmental stages of type 1.
Mm-hmm. And you guys, when did this program start? It's been recent, correct?
Oh, yeah. Maybe, I feel like it was during COVID when we first started putting stuff up. Like I said, my dear friend and colleague, Laurel Messer, is really the founder and brainchild of this whole endeavor. And so, yeah, it's definitely recent, within the last couple of years for sure. It's brand new, which is why, we're certainly open to any other thoughts about what could go there, what could be useful, keeping within our mission and in a vision of what we're doing. Yeah.
Right. And I know someone mentioned in the chat earlier, it was Carrie Sparling, shout out Carrie. But she was just saying, and I know, she's been pretty open about her issues in the past with skin issues with Dexcom, and a lot of us have that. And I know you mentioned that you have some skin resources. Do you have it up? Could we take it?
I could show you. This is actually the newest thing that we just posted the other day. So we're still kind of working on tweaking it, but this is our current version. And I'm actually just going to pull it up on this PDF here because it might be easier for me to show it in a way that people can see it.
Thank you.
Can you see that, do you think?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, so this is our Skin Solutions handout that can be found on the website. And so our first page, we have 5 tips for placement with pictures, kind of, guidance on where to put the device, like how you know if you have enough subcutaneous tissue, like using the pinch test, avoiding bendy areas, like some, tips on rotation. And this is a lovely picture of lipohypertrophy, or kind of reminding to watch out for that as well. Then we have 5 tips for preventing skin irritation, and tips on how to clean the skin, like different skin preps to provide a barrier between the skin and the adhesive on the tape. and some other, things that people use that you may not hear from your healthcare provider per se, but at least I know in our clinic some people do, but using like steroid fluticasone spray on your skin prior to can be really helpful. And so it has some stuff like that. And then 5 tips for extra sticking power, using barriers and tapes and other strategies. And then tips for removal and healing. So this is one I actually feel really proud of, because I think this is one area of skin health that we don't talk as much about. We do talk quite a bit about, using barrier wipes and where to place the device and things, but honestly, a lot of skin injury can happen during the removal process. And so using products to help it unstick, especially if you've been using things to help it stick, and then keeping the angle of the tape removal low and moving it slowly, using creams and lotions after it's been removed to help promote healing of that location, and then also reminding about what would be considered concerning signs of potential infection. And then we have a whole list of helpful products that we think are really good, that we've heard from the patients that we work with. And so they include Amazon links as well that would take you directly there for the ones that are on Amazon versus, the ones you can get from the manufacturer upon request. So
this is amazing. And I think
that is our first stab at that.
Yeah. And I think, well, first of all, I love no bendy areas, because that is something that I don't know that I remember to talk about with people. But also, yeah, the removal. And I do have to say, I pulled a Dexcom off last week. I started to pull it and I was like, ooh, that hurt. And I had my husband pull the other one, but I still asked him, I was like, yeah, just rip it like a Band-Aid. But low and slow. I'm going to do that next time, because yes.
Yeah.
Skin irritation. I also am so impressed with the nasal steroid. I think it was like a diabetes online community find that a mom tried it with her kid and figured that out. And I just am I just really love those things when they happen like that. It's just something that I would have never thought about, but it does make sense because it's a steroid,
Mm-hmm.
It's very cool.
Yeah, and it is very cool. There's so much to learn from people with diabetes, and there's so much wealth to share. And I think it's good to have a combination of, the real world experience from those living with diabetes. And a lot of what I learned about skin protection comes from troubleshooting with people,
right,
and working with them to help figure out what works. And they come up with things and I come up with things, and we work together on that. And it's really, really important. There's a lot to learn just from each other and from people doing this, especially when it comes to skin, because it's such an art, really. It's an art and a science to keep that skin protected.
And everybody's so different, you know, like Tegaderms for me, I feel like make things fall off more easily, but Hypofix, that stuff works for me, right? And it's hard, right? This is the hard part of diabetes education, because you're like, well, this is what works for some people, but everybody is so different, and it is a lot of crowdsourcing. But I love the approach that you take. It is always, it's patient and healthcare professional together, just trying to make the best out of the situation that we have.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next question is, does your website ever help connect people who are all learning the same pump at the same time? Or is there a community aspect to the resources?
Yeah, no, to the short answer is we don't have anything like that. It's simply a housing of resources. We do have also some other things like links. We keep a publications section that includes references and links to both some peer-reviewed journals and medical journals, but also media type publications, from like Diatribe or other venues, again, to provide both, because both the user experience plus the evidence base are both really important. And so we have that. I did want to mention. But yeah, we don't, and I don't think we will, and that's mainly because I think there's a lot of that is already there, and that users and people with diabetes are really, really good at creating that community. And it's really, really impressive the way that has happened. And I think a really unique strength of the type 1 diabetes community specifically is the ability to create those connections and forums and communities. So we hope we can provide resources that the community finds useful, but so far we've not attempted to go that direction.
Yeah, but it's an interesting idea to have people connected who are learning the devices at the same time. I really like that idea, because I think it could be, again, it's just really overwhelming to learn everything about a device, especially if you're new to an insulin pump. I think it's so much information, and especially like parents and kids, it would be interesting to have. And, sometimes for different studies, we would do group trainings. And I always loved that, because then the parents could, connect with each other if they wanted to. And so if they're having questions and, they didn't want to reach out to us for some reason, but they wanted to text each other,
So I wish this was live so I could ask more about what the thoughts are, because it is a really intriguing idea. I don't know if that person is still around and can put more things in their Q&A, but what did you have in mind for that, or how something like that could work on a website like ours that is just a website? It's not a social media site or anything that having a place you can leave comments and questions or something, maybe, or
I don't know. Yeah, because I would say maybe you could do a Facebook group, but then you get into moderating, and how people are online. It's not always, it's a lot to moderate something like that. But I don't know. We should think about that. Maybe they'll send another comment.
If anyone has thoughts on that, you're welcome to share, with the understanding that we actually, being a university, do not have the ability to do a Facebook group, and we definitely are sticking with website and primarily to house resources and share our experience. But within that venue, I'm certainly be interested to know if anyone had any novel ideas on how something like that could be done. Because it's true, if you have a lot of people who are going there to because they want to learn information about Control-IQ or look at this tool to see if they can, help improve their outcomes, maybe it would be cool to have a place to leave questions or chats that people could answer if they were there, or, I don't know, things like that, possibly.
Oh, I love that idea. One of the other questions is, how did the device companies feel about resources developed and designed outside of their companies? And have you guys ever asked them that?
So that's a good question. So first, I think one of our strengths with the Panther Project is the fact that we are independent from industry, that we are clinicians and researchers, and we are and we're academia, these are academically based resources. And so on the one hand, it doesn't really matter what they think because everything, actually all of our CARES framework, has academic peer-reviewed publishing behind it and stuff. So, we have a basis for that. But we are, we do a lot of these trials that are industry sponsored, and we have been having conversations with industry about just how do we make sure that users are having accessible resources that are really going to benefit them, and how do we work together on that? So it's early on, but we have had some conversations, and I would say overall industry is really supportive, especially now that we've gotten into this clinical tool area, because like I said, it's very hard for clinicians to keep up with devices, and the level of knowledge that you need to provide quality care to a user is relatively high, and not a clinician cannot be an expert on every single device. And so what our tool does is it basically guides them through that encounter and it gives them that expert level care without having to be an expert. And so that benefits industry, because if a clinician can feel comfortable using the device, then they're going to be more likely to want to support their patients using the device. So I do think that generally it's been positive.
Yeah, I think too, I mean, from the adult side of things, not as much pediatrics, but there are a lot of people with insulin dependent diabetes, type 1 diabetes, that are seeing primary care providers, not endocrinologists, because endocrinologists, you know, there's a host of different problems, right? We don't have a whole lot of them, and they're usually in places where people have to drive hours to get to. I mean, when I was working at Stanford, we would have a lot of people driving down from Sacramento, and you know, the traffic there is really fun. So, and you guys in Colorado, I understand that you have certain populations that live really far away in remote mountains. Is that correct?
Yes. The western, the kind of central west of the US is pretty interesting in the sense that basically between like Kansas and California, we're kind of it for pediatrics. Now adults may have many other options, because they could go see a pediatric or just an endocrinologist who doesn't necessarily specialize, but a lot of pediatric endocrinologists are like, you can't come here. They're scared of type 1. So CDC really is the main care provider for, in pediatrics anyway, for all of Colorado, but also neighboring states like Wyoming and Nebraska and Kansas.
Wow.
So yeah, we do have lots of patients and families that travel hours and hours away. We have a strong telemedicine program so that maybe they don't have to come as far as often. But but I mean, I think that I think that the reality is that especially for primary care providers, you should, if you need to go to a primary care provider for your diabetes care, let's at least try and equip these providers to be able to provide you quality care. And it really does benefit everybody, that the more people that can provide the care, the better. So
absolutely. And the more that we have these tools that you can print out or hand to a provider to have them look over and understand, I think it's just going to get easier. So, and the more that, we as patients go in and say, hey, this is what I learned about, what do you think? Can we work together?
Yeah,
we'll get there.
Yeah. I just had a thought. I'm like, if there was a person with diabetes who, for example, was on Control IQ and was like, my doctor doesn't know anything about it, and I don't even know why, you print out the Control IQ tool, bring it with you to your appointment and say, let's do this together. Let's figure this out and what we can do with this device and how we can, make sure I'm getting the best care possible. And
definitely. I love that idea. And so the next question is, as a newly diagnosed family being 3 months into diagnosis, this information is really helpful. Is there any collaboration with other children's hospitals to include it as a reference in their home binders?
Home binders, I don't know what that means.
So probably like when you go and you get diagnosed and you get like a binder or like a book, so something that you could put in with that. Or, the other thought that I had was, seeing if JDRF would put it in their new diagnosed kits that they used to give. I think
that's a great idea. We haven't tried that yet or reached out about anything like that. But yeah, that is a good idea. Or also, organizations like Children with Diabetes, for example, where it's bringing people together. Maybe share it that way too. But it would be. And I would need to only be for Barbara Davis Center. We would like it to be accessible to all. Yeah, which is why it'll always be free. That is one thing we're very committed to. Is that this is a free. These are free, accessible resources.
I think too, as for the person who asked that question, if you feel comfortable, showing your healthcare provider at the next visit this website that you found, or, bringing in one of the printouts and saying, hey, this is free, this is online. If you guys want to use this, here it is, because sometimes it just takes someone showing them. It's word of mouth, and, just like everyone's busy, so are our healthcare providers. And so just, taking it in next time you go could be really helpful. And then somebody suggested having CWD host a Zoom for people on specific devices, like different Zoom groups, which actually we could totally do. That would be a way to sort of do the community aspect. I don't know how we would get it for people who like are just starting those devices, but we could do, I mean, even if it was people who are looking to start it, then they could ask questions to people who are using it. I like that idea. That could be fun. And then there's one more question, which is, does your site reference the mental health issues that can result from wearing diabetes related devices, or the stigma that can come from it, or I don't know, your pump beeping sometimes, things like that?
Yeah, that it does not currently, but that is a great suggestion, because that is a big part of, life with devices, and that definitely fits within our, the vision of this program, and which is to support success with devices. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to take a note about that and see if we want to explore adding content about that for sure, about, dealing with the hassles and the ups and the downs of devices.
I think a lot of my friends with diabetes and I talk about, because we're so involved in the diabetes community and we have like friends with diabetes, and so every time I see somebody in public, I'm also just friendly. I don't know if this is part of that, but like every time I see someone in public with a pump or a CGM, I get so excited. I'm like, pull up my sleeve and show my Dexcom. I saw a lady at the zoo last week, and she had a Medtronic pump on, and I, pulled out my pump. I was like, hey, I got one too. And she was like, yeah. It kind of always goes that way, but I'm not going to stop doing it, because you never know. One time I did that at a library. There was a little girl and she had a bright pink Medtronic pump, and, I showed her mine, and she had just gotten the Dexcom and didn't know how to put it on. And the family, I gave them my phone number and they called me. It's just, you never know. You never know. So I'm still going to get excited, and people will judge me, and I don't care. So you just have to own it at some point.
Yeah.
So, and then there's one more comment that, I promised you that doctors love high yield cheat sheets because it saves them time. And then people should take these sheets to their doctors, even their PCPs, just because it'll help them understand, and it'll help them hopefully be more willing to help offer it to other people, because that's one of the things that I think, for me, I want to make sure everybody has access to getting these devices. And the whole insurance thing is a whole nother conversation, but
right.
I don't want, the healthcare professional should never be the barrier. So
right. Yes. Yeah. And if you think this device has a 400-page user guide, I'm not gonna touch that. We're like, no, we can condense this into a 1-page thing, and you can, know what you need to know, and you can support the patients that you work with, and you can do this, we need to do more of that, because things are not going to stop advancing, and that's good. Options are great, and we're really making a lot of progress in the technology space. But we got to find a way to also make it accessible. And that means insurance, but when we hear accessibility, we a lot of times immediately think of insurance, but I also think it's a lot more than that. It's about the education, the understanding, the ability to feel confident in using it for users and clinicians. And so I think that's the accessible place that we are living. That's the accessibility space that we're focused on, is making it, the information and the concepts, kind of digestible in a quick, easy way.
Which is huge, because I don't know that anybody else has thought to do something like this. I think this is a gap that you have identified, you and Laurel have identified as, look, all of their companies have their own proprietary things, right? And they have what they want to give you and what they want to highlight. but no one had really done something to say, hey, closed loop is here to stay. This is what's happening, right? These automated insulin delivery systems, we need to make it, systematic, where everybody can understand how this works, so that people can actually use it successfully, and that more people will prescribe it. I think that's a huge thing that you have done to fill that gap. And I am just really grateful that you have done it. I know I saw Laurel give her talk at, I think it was ISPAD, where she added a new chapter to the year, maybe it was ATTD.
ATTD, she added the practical implementation of technology, which basically just means like, so much that's out there is about the clinical trials and the data, and what was the time in range, what was the outcomes for A1C, and then you have that piece. And then you could find a lot of information on algorithms and a lot of discussion about fuzzy logic versus PID versus, all these things, MPC. But what's really missing is the implication of all that information on the everyday use. And yeah, so I'm glad that that's what you've taken, Marissa, because that is what we were trying to do, is fill that gap, in the sense of, what it really comes down to is you don't need to actually understand. I mean, you can if you want, but you don't need to understand the ins and the outs. You don't need to watch that video that the engineering student posted about the ID algorithm. You don't need to know that in order to use your device successfully. You need to know some basics on how it calculates the insulin, what you as the user can adjust and not adjust, when the system's what you need to do to stay in that automated feature, or when you might choose yourself not to be in it. And then what are the few key education points that are unique to that system? And tell me a little bit about the sensor that it uses and what I need to know about that. And those really are the main things that we think really is the information that we need to know. And the best device for each individual is the one that they can use, and the one that they will be most successful using. It's not about the algorithm that's in it. That's what we've learned in this field after doing clinical trials, is most of the trials show that if you use a hybrid closed loop system, that regardless of the system, the outcomes are very, very similar across trials. And the study designs are different. You can't necessarily compare head to head, but my point is that the outcomes are very similar. And so it's less about the algorithm and more about the device and personalizing that and picking the one that each individual person is going to be most successful on, or fits their goals and needs in their care. So
yeah, and that they're willing to wear, right? I mean, and especially for, for kids, for people that are really active, for, whatever your lifestyle is, we all have different things, right? And so I think it's just so nice to be in a place where we have all these options. It is, I know, for a little while, it was really only like 2 things that you could choose from. I mean, going way back, it was like the backpack guy, which I know Laurel always calls Rocket Man. Thank God we're not doing that anymore.
Yes. It's good to remember we've come very far. We've definitely come very far.
Yes, we have. And it's so great to take it from the engineering side to the practical human side of how to actually use it and have the most success and be the happiest, right? And try to forget that your diabetes is there a little bit. I think that's been the real beauty of closed loop for me, is like not having to carry a meter around all the time. I mean, I do if I'm going to be gone for a long time, but like, I don't remember the last time I checked my blood sugar. And that is the coolest thing to me, because I used to just have to carry so much stuff with me, it's just, it's so cool.
Sleep.
Yes.
I would say that's the biggest theme that I've learned over the years from families is, oh my gosh, I love this device because I'm now sleeping through the night. Because that is where hybrid closed loop shines, actually, is the overnight is where you see the most benefit. It's your glucose levels are stable, very few high and low, excursions. And so that usually equals sleep. And that is really a huge for quality of life and just overall well-being. And
right.
that has been, I think, one of the most exciting things to me. Is I love when someone starts a closed loop system and then I get to talk to them after the first couple of weeks and they're like, I don't even know what to do with myself with all this sleep. Like, I've had to untrain myself to wake up at, this is, and especially parents of younger kids.
Yes.
I've had to train myself not to wake up at 3 a.m. because I just don't need to anymore, and so that's been really, really awesome to see.
Yeah, that's such a relief, because my mom woke up every night for far too long. Thank you, Brenda. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Cari. I really appreciate your time. I want to remind everybody that this is going to be recorded, so you can watch it whenever you want. And our next Screenside Chat is going to be with Dr. Laya Eklesbauer from Stanford. She is going to be talking about fat and protein boluses with closed loop systems. So that'll be really fun. And if anybody wants to check out our community page that has upcoming conferences and information, it's cwd.is/community. And please check out the Panther Project website. Can you please list the website, or just say it? Was it pantherprogram.org or?
Oh, hold on. Yes, it is bdcpantherdiabetes.org.
And I'll make sure we post it online too. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Sunday. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye. And thanks everybody for participating. Bye.
Bye.